Hello, my name is Jack Hansen Jr. Welcome to the Jack Hansen Show. Where on my show we give you up-to-date interviews and ask the hard questions about what's called the KW versus Armstrong class action lawsuit. My guest this time is my good friend Christine Pisani of the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Jack. I'm glad to be here.
Idaho Council. What is the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities?
Well, Jack, the Council on Developmental Disabilities is a organization that is an advocacy organization, and we also work on leadership development for adults with developmental disabilities and families, as well as working on trying to improve service systems in our state. You will find a DD council in every state and U.S. territory. Now, we are in federal law as well as in state law, and we work with families and adults with developmental disabilities to try and improve systems and public policy for adults who live in our state.
Thank you for that explanation. How did the Council on Developmental Disabilities get involved with the KW versus Armstrong class action lawsuit?
Well, in the fall of 2016, the department was starting to work on the settlement from the lawsuit. So I approached the department and I said, we would really like to help you because we think we have something to offer that we think you might need, which is the voice of adults with developmental disabilities and families. So that meeting went really well, and they seemed to really appreciate the opportunity to bring adults with developmental disabilities and families to the table. And so we started to work on creating a collaborative stakeholder group that represented a number of adults from across the state, family members who represented adults with significant disabilities, service providers, and a number of key state agency personnel, as well as Disability Rights Idaho and the Center on Disabilities and Human Development, who are our sister organizations under the Developmental Disabilities Act. So that all came together, and we had a kickoff meeting, I believe January 4th, where we brought everyone together to try and help people understand what it was that we were trying to accomplish. And after that, we spent 6 months of intense work meeting with self-advocates and families to learn about their experience in the adult developmental disability service system and what needed to happen in order to improve those services.
What did the Community Now group do?
So Community Now is the name of the stakeholder collaborative that you were involved with, Jack, and we met for 6 months intensely with 3 different work groups. We had the community work group, the employment work group, and the home group. And so we had self-advocates and family members divided into both of those 3 work groups, and each council staff was responsible for leading the discussions about those particular topics in those work groups. And the center of attention was families and self-advocates who were at the center of the room, and no one else in the work group was allowed to really participate in that discussion because we wanted to honor the experiences of adults with developmental disabilities and their families and not open it up for dispute about their experience or provide relationship to why something might have happened. It was just a way to honor their experience and learn from the experience. And at the end, we decided that we needed to do a statewide listening tour. So we went around the state and hosted local groups, local discussion groups about developmental disability services for adults. And we talked to over 250 families and adults with developmental disabilities. And we learned a lot that was all included in a report called the Service and Support Recommendation from Community Now. It resulted in 17 recommendations made by the Community Now group. And the ultimate verifier of all of those recommendations were adults with developmental disabilities and family members. They rated person-centered planning as their top priority. So that is something that the Council and the Department of Health and Welfare, they're working on right now. to try and improve the person-centered planning process in our state and to implement an improved system so that people with developmental disabilities are at the center of person-centered planning and are actually driving what ends up being in their plan, because that's the way it should be. So all that work's being done, and we hope that in 2019 we'll be going to the legislature with some proposed recommendations.
So the next question goes to me, Christine.
Okay, so Jack, I was just curious, as a Community Now member, you were very involved, and we came up with the 17 recommendations. Were there some recommendations that were really important to you, Jack?
Yes. Mental health for people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, direct health staff honoring my rights and privacy, and having the ability to have input on who is hired and work with me, as well as getting paid as a disability advocate. People with disabilities should be paid to work on policy issues to make them better.
Those were really good additions to the recommendations, Jack.
I know. Now, if a person with disabilities is not able to advocate for himself or others, then what's it going to take for change to come through? Either treat us as respecting dignity or step aside.
You made very good points in all of our work groups, Jack. You were a really important part to the Community Now process. And you continue to be, because Community Now continues to meet as the department works through the different recommendations and opportunities with the settlement. We bring the Community Now stakeholder group back together to provide input into what needs to happen, how to shape the adult developmental disability service system. So it's been a wonderful collaboration, and I think that it will continue for the length of time it takes to get the settlement implemented in a way that adults and families feel like is a quality
Plain and simply
system.
put, you guys, people with developmental disabilities aren't getting the mental health in Idaho, aren't getting the mental health care that they deserve, rightfully deserve. Thank you, Christine, for being on the show.
You're welcome, Jack. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, comment, and go to www.ourhealthandwelfare.org, where there's a place on the website where you can contact with you for more information. There's a huge question that just came up in my thinking about this. How can people get involved? Well, the answer is simple. Tell their friends, tell their family members. Get as much information as you can on what's happening. And you can also call your senators, call your congressman. There's a whole array of people that you can call. But don't just sit around and do nothing. I must stress, disability rights is civil rights. So please, do whatever is necessary to protect your rights. Call a legislator, call a congressman, write letters, do anything you can. But just don't sit there and do nothing. Thank you.